The courtroom in Franklin County had heard confessions, lies, sobs, and sentencing pleas that could hollow out a man's soul. Its oak-paneled walls carried decades of human consequence. But on that Tuesday morning, something different hung in the air, thicker than tension, heavier than routine justice. Even before the judge entered, people sensed it. Camera shutters clicked softly in the back row. Reporters whispered. Jurors avoided eye contact with the defendant, a broad-shouldered man in a gray suit whose wrists bore faint red marks from cuffs removed minutes earlier. At the prosecution table, folders were stacked neatly, evidence labeled and indexed. This was supposed to be clean, efficient, a textbook case. At the center of it all sat Rex. The German Shepherd was massive, disciplined, and unnervingly calm. A K9 with 8 years of service, multiple commendations, and a reputation among officers as unshakable. His coat was groomed to a shine. A faint scar crossed his muzzle, a souvenir from a takedown years ago. His handler, Officer Daniel Moore, stood beside him, hand resting lightly on the leash. Rex didn't need it. He never did. To the jury, Rex was more than a dog. He was proof. Proof that the raid had been lawful. Proof that the alerts were accurate. Proof that the evidence, drugs, weapons, cash, had been found by the book. A living stamp of credibility. Court is now in session, the bailiff announced. Judge Eleanor Watkins entered, her expression firm but already tired. She had reviewed the case files late into the night. Drug trafficking, organized crime, a dangerous defendant. She expected resistance, legal maneuvering, nothing more. She did not expect a child. From the side door, a woman entered hesitantly, holding the hand of a little girl so small she looked misplaced in the grand room. The woman, late 30s, worn eyes, was Lily's foster mother. The child herself was 3 years old, maybe younger looking, with soft brown curls tied unevenly and shoes that squeaked faintly with every step. Lily clutched a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. Its fabric was faded from too many washes, too many nights held close. A murmur rippled across the courtroom. "Who brought a child?" someone whispered. Judge Watkins frowned. She checked her notes, then looked up. "Counsel?" she asked quietly. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the child is listed as a connected individual. She was present at the location during the original incident." The defense attorney's eyebrows rose slightly, interested. The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, she may remain for now." Lily didn't understand where she was. She only knew the room smelled strange, wood, paper, something sharp like metal. Her foster mother knelt beside her, whispering, "Stay right here, sweetheart. Just watch." Lily nodded, thumb in her mouth. Across the room, Rex's ears twitched. Officer Moore felt it immediately. Rex was alert, not aggressive, not anxious. Focused. His gaze fixed not on the defendant, not on the judge, but on the little girl. "That's odd," Moore muttered under his breath. The prosecutor began questioning. Dates, procedures, standard K9 protocol. Rex sat perfectly still, a statue of discipline. The jury watched him more than the witnesses. He was convincing without speaking. Lily shifted on her feet. She tugged her foster mother's hand. "Dog," she whispered. "Yes, honey, that's a police dog." Lily frowned. She stared at Rex harder now, her brows knitting together as if trying to solve a puzzle too big for her small mind. Something stirred in her chest, something old, something unfinished. While the prosecutor droned on, Lily let go. No one noticed at first. Not the judge, not the lawyers, not even her foster mother, who was distracted by a buzzing phone she wasn't supposed to have on. Tiny shoes tapped against marble. By the time someone gasped, Lily was already halfway down the aisle. "Wait," her foster mother whispered sharply. The bailiff stepped forward instinctively. Rex stood. The sound of his paws against the floor echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Every muscle in his body went rigid, eyes locked on the approaching child. Officer Moore's heart slammed into his ribs. "Rex," he warned softly. The judge raised a hand. "Hold." Lily stopped 3 feet from the dog. She looked impossibly small standing there, barely reaching Rex's shoulder. The stuffed rabbit dangled from her fingers, brushing the floor. Time stretched. Rex lowered his head slowly, nostrils flaring. His tail, which had been steady moments ago, stilled mid-sway. Lily tilted her head, studying his face with a seriousness that didn't belong to someone her age. Then she spoke. Not loudly, not clearly, but clearly enough. "You left," Lily said. A chill ran through the room. Officer Moore felt the leash tremble in his hand. "What did she say?" someone whispered. Lily took a tiny step closer. "I waited," she added, her voice cracking like thin ice. Rex made a sound no one had ever heard from him before, a low, broken whine that vibrated through his chest. His ears flattened. His eyes shimmered. The prosecutor stopped mid-sentence. The judge leaned forward slowly. "Bailiff, hold everyone." Lily raised her hand, small fingers stretching toward Rex's muzzle. She didn't touch him yet. She just hovered there as if asking permission. "You promised," she said softly. "You sniffed the door." The courtroom went completely silent. No coughs, no whispers, no camera clicks. Rex's legs buckled. He sat. Then, without command, without training, he lowered himself all the way to the floor. His chin pressed against the marble, his tail curled inward. Submission. Recognition. Officer Moore's blood ran cold. "That's not possible," the prosecutor murmured. The defense attorney was already on his feet. Judge Watkins felt something heavy settle in her stomach. "Whose child is this?" she asked. The foster mother stood shakily. She was found during the East Harbor warehouse raid 3 years ago, the same one the dog led. Every head in the room snapped toward Rex. Lily finally touched him. Her fingers rested on his scarred muzzle, gentle, familiar. Rex closed his eyes as if bracing for something long overdue. "I cried," Lily whispered, "but you didn't come back." A sharp intake of breath rippled across the jury. Rex let out a trembling howl, soft, restrained, full of something dangerously close to grief. The judge's gavel hovered in her hand, forgotten. Because in that moment, everyone understood the same terrifying truth. This trial was no longer about a criminal defendant. It was about a door that was never opened. And a voice that had waited 3 years to be heard. The courtroom's silence hung like a thick fog. Every breath seemed loud. Every small movement, paper shuffling, a shoe scraping marble, a pen clicking, felt monumental. No one had seen anything like this before. A 3-year-old standing in front of a police dog, speaking to him as if he were a human witness, and the dog responding with recognition, even sorrow. Officer Moore's hand tightened around the leash. "Rex, stay," he murmured, though his voice shook. The dog remained seated, head lowered, eyes locked on Lily. There was no misreading it. Rex knew her. Something about this child triggered memories that had been buried for 3 years. Lily tilted her head, brown curls brushing her cheeks. Her tiny hand hovered over Rex's muzzle. She whispered again, "Why did you leave me?" The courtroom collectively froze. The defendant's smug smile faltered, replaced by unease. Reporters exchanged frantic glances, cameras clicking furiously. Even the judge, whose life had been spent in legal battles, felt the weight of those words pierce her stern judicial armor. The foster mother gasped softly, tears threatening to spill. She had never heard Lily articulate the events of that night in words so sharp, so accusatory. And yet it was Rex who answered first. A low whine escaped his chest, a sound deep and guttural. His tail flicked once, uncertain, then tucked closer to his body. His ears flattened. In every movement, every micro-expression, he seemed to communicate guilt, recognition, and regret. Officer Moore's throat went dry. He He wouldn't normally react like this, he said, voice barely audible. Rex is trained to be neutral in court. Lily's small voice cut through the tension. You promised come back. Her innocence clashed violently with the adult comprehension of what she meant. This wasn't just a child speaking. This was someone who had been abandoned, left behind during a life-threatening raid, and had survived by waiting, by hopping. Rex whimpered, pressed his chin further into the marble floor, and slowly turned his gaze toward Officer Moore, as if to say, I tried, but I had no choice. The judge's hand hovered over the gavel, indecision written across her face. Miss Lily, she asked cautiously, are you speaking to the dog? Yes, Lily said simply, tilting her head again. He knows. The courtroom erupted in a quiet chaos. Lawyers whispered frantically. Jurors shifted uncomfortably. Some reporters murmured under their breath, already thinking of headlines. Toddler addresses K9 in courtroom, a story no one would forget. But the weight of the room wasn't in the media. It was in the past. The night 3 years ago. The warehouse, the raid, the door that never opened. The prosecution's star witness, Rex, had suddenly become the embodiment of failure, negligence, and perhaps something darker, a hidden truth that had been buried. The defense attorney's smile was thin but sharp. He could smell the shift in power. Your Honor, he said smoothly, rising, this interaction proves that the K9 operation was flawed. If a child remained undiscovered, how reliable was the evidence obtained? How reliable was the entire raid? Gasps swept through the room. Officer Moore's face paled. He opened his mouth to argue, to assert the integrity of the raid, but the words caught in his throat. How could he defend against a 3-year-old's truth, spoken so plainly and met with a dog's instinctive acknowledgement? The judge's voice cut through the tension, firm but measured. We will proceed cautiously. Bailiff, please ensure the child remains under supervision. Officer Moore, Rex, remain where you are. Lily crouched slightly, resting her hand fully on Rex's head. She whispered a single word, safe. Rex responded almost immediately. His entire body relaxed, though a shiver ran through his frame. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. The prosecutor tried to regain control, pointing to Rex and the sequence of commands issued during the raid. Your Honor, Rex was acting appropriately, trained to standard. Any suggestion otherwise? Lily interrupted, small but firm. I cried there, I hid. Her words, raw and simple, cut deeper than any legal argument. A pause fell over everyone. Even the defendant, who had entered the courtroom confident and cocky, felt his bravado crack. The smirk left his face. Officer Moore's chest tightened. He remembered that night vividly. Rex had paused in front of the sealed door, his body stiff. The building had been dangerous, structural instability, a chance explosion. He had obeyed protocol, left the room. They had all left, and somewhere in the chaos a child had remained unseen. Lily's foster mother began shaking, quietly, unable to hold back tears. She's telling the truth. She survived because... Her voice faltered. The judge leaned forward, voice softer now. Officer Moore, can you confirm what happened in that room? Moore swallowed. Every eye in the courtroom was on him, every judgment silent but present. He felt like the floor had fallen out beneath him. Yes, I saw her. The child. I wasn't supposed to go back. Orders. The words died in his throat. He couldn't finish. Lily's hand remained on Rex. He stayed, she whispered. He waited too. The dog let out another soft whine, lifting his head slightly, looking at Moore with something almost human in his gaze. Recognition. An accusation. A memory of guilt. The defense attorney leaned into the moment, voice sharp. Your Honor, the credibility of this entire operation is now under question. If the dog, the officer, and the prosecution all overlooked a child, then the evidence may be compromised. The judge's eyes narrowed. She knew the room had shifted. This wasn't just a case anymore, it was a reckoning. From the back, murmurs of disbelief began to ripple outward, reporters sensing a historic moment. Cameramen trained their lenses on the child and the dog, capturing a tableau that seemed impossible, cinematic, and deeply emotional. Lily's gaze never wavered from Rex. "You're supposed to protect," she said softly, "not leave." The dog pressed closer, letting her hand brush his scarred muzzle. His eyes were wide, full of something that looked like remorse. The courtroom watched, mesmerized. For a moment, the legal strategies, the evidence, the past, everything, was secondary to this child's voice, the dog's instinct, and the silent reckoning between them. Then the judge's gavel fell with a firm rap. "Recess," she ordered. The bailiff moved quickly to guide the spectators and jurors out. Reporters clamored for a statement, flashing cameras capturing every motion. But the courtroom was quiet where it mattered most. Lily crouched by Rex, whispering words no one else could hear. The dog lay down completely, eyes closed, as if surrendering to the truth he had long avoided. Officer Moore stood frozen. He had trained dogs for over a decade. He had never seen one respond like this. Never. The defendant, pale and sweating, glanced nervously at the child, then the dog. His confident posture cracked. He knew instinctively that his defense had just become infinitely more complicated. And yet, the most unsettling part of all lingered in the air. This was only the beginning. Because the words of a 3-year-old, spoken directly to a dog trained to obey, had already begun to unravel years of carefully constructed narratives. And everyone, every adult, every officer, every juror, every observer, knew that by the end of this day, lives would change forever. The courtroom doors closed for recess, but outside whispers swirled. "Did you see that? The dog and the girl." Even the reporters knew this wasn't just a story. It was a phenomenon, a revelation that could shake a city. And Lily, tiny and unassuming, tugged gently on Rex's ear, murmuring, "I waited and you came back." Rex lifted his head slowly, his eyes locked on hers. The world outside the courtroom was about to collide with the truth that had waited 3 long years. And no one, not even the most seasoned lawyer, knew what would happen when the next words were spoken. The courtroom was empty now, doors closed for recess, but the tension lingered like smoke. Officer Moore stood by Rex, whose head remained low, ears flat. Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit, whispering softly as if reassuring the dog. Outside, reporters speculated wildly. Inside, the truth was waiting, buried in shadows, 3 years old and now ready to rise. The judge called the parties back in after only 15 minutes. Cameras clicked again, phones recorded, and the air was electric with expectation. The prosecutor stood, shuffling papers nervously, trying to regain control. But the narrative had shifted. It wasn't about procedure anymore. It wasn't about drugs, money, or arrests. It was about that night, the night everyone had pretended didn't exist. The bailiff wheeled in a large monitor. "Exhibit H, bodycam footage from the raid," the judge announced, "for review." Moore's stomach knotted. He had watched the footage countless times, every angle scrutinized, every command logged. But seeing it in front of the court, reliving that night, made the air feel suffocating. The video began, flashing lights, smoke, shouting, officers moving in tight formations. Rex led the way, nose low, ears perked. The warehouse smelled of chemicals, decay, and something metallic, blood maybe, from minor injuries during a struggle. The camera followed Rex as he paused in front of a closed door. His body stiffened. His tail froze. His growl was low and tentative. Officer Moore's voice echoed from the recording. "Move on, Rex. Move on." Rex hesitated. His paw scraped the wooden floor. His nose twitched. He pressed against the door, signaling, pleading almost, but Moore gave the order again. "Leave it." The camera shifted. Officers pushed past him. The room beyond remained sealed, marked unstable, structural risk, explosion risk, hazardous chemicals, orders were orders. And in that room, a child had waited. The image froze on the door, the frame dimly illuminated by flashlight glare. A tiny hand pressed against the wood from the inside. No one had noticed her. Not the officers. Not Moore. Not Rex. Lily's small voice cut across the courtroom as the video played. That's when I cried. The jury gasped. Some leaned forward, hands over mouths. A reporter whispered, no one knew she was there. Moore swallowed hard. He could feel the old guilt twisting his stomach. Every officer had assumed the room was empty. Every protocol had been followed, yet somehow the child remained hidden, surviving alone for hours. The defense attorney rose slowly, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he said, voice measured, this video shows exactly what I've been suggesting. The raid was incomplete. The operation was flawed. A child remained inside. How can anyone claim the evidence gathered is infallible? How can anyone trust this dog's alerts when the K9 was, apparently, overridden? The room shivered. Every officer present shifted uneasily. Even the judge leaned back slightly, fingers steepled, realizing the scope of what had been revealed. Lily stepped forward, tiny feet padding against the polished floor. He scratched the door, she said softly. Who? The judge asked. The dog, she answered. He tried, but they told him to leave. Rex let out a small whine, pressing closer to Lily, ears flat, as if confirming her words. Officer Moore's face went pale. The prosecutor attempted to interject. Your Honor, the dog followed protocol. The building was unsafe. We had to prioritize safety and evidence. The defense attorney cut him off sharply. Safety, evidence, lives are at stake, a child's life. And yet this dog trained to protect was told to ignore it. How convenient. Lily's foster mother rose, tears streaking her cheeks. She's telling the truth. She was in there waiting, alone, 3 years old, and Rex, he tried. The judge pressed her lips together. Officer Moore, can you explain why the dog's instincts were ignored? Moore swallowed. His throat was dry, his thoughts a tangle of fear, regret, and lingering trauma. We were under direct orders. Command came through the radio. We were told to proceed evidence first. The child, his voice faltered. We didn't know. You did know, Lily's voice cracked as she stepped closer to Rex. You saw me, you left anyway. The room froze. Even the reporters were silent now. Her words were simple but devastating, a clarity that adults could not dispute. Rex pressed his muzzle into Lily's hand, a low, mournful whine escaping him. Officer Moore's heart pounded. He remembered the moment vividly, Rex staring at the door, scratching lightly, alerting, pleading. And he had obeyed protocol. He had walked away. The flashback washed over him like cold water. The warehouse, shouts, smoke, fear. The defendant's men cornering Rex briefly before he tore past them. The sealed room, the door scuffed with paw prints. The tiny hand waving, hopping. And now, 3 years later, the courtroom bore witness. The defense attorney leaned in close to the jury, voice low and dangerous. If the K9 was told to ignore a live human presence, what else was ignored? How many corners were cut? How many lives endangered? Moore's gaze shifted to Rex. The dog had never looked guilty in the way humans do, but in that moment he did. His eyes reflected a lifetime of obedience, of loyalty, and the burden of a choice that had cost an innocent child hours of fear. The judge, voice measured but tight, said, "Recess again, but this court will reconvene with further testimony regarding the operation's chain of command. Officer Moore, you are to remain available. All parties, no contact with the media." As the courtroom emptied, murmurs buzzed through the hallways. Reporters were already scribbling. Toddler confronts police dog in court. Video shows child ignored in raid. But outside, something else was happening. Someone, a shadowed figure, was making calls, threats, warnings, instructions. The defendant's network was vast, dangerous. The revelation of a living witness, the child, was not just embarrassing. It was a threat to their freedom. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner, Lily crouched beside Rex. Her fingers traced the scar on his muzzle. "You tried," she whispered. "I know you tried." The dog leaned into her, tail thumping weakly against the floor. His gaze flicked toward Officer Moore, then back to Lily. He had tried, yes, but the night had been beyond him, beyond anyone. And the court, with all its power and procedure, had finally caught a glimpse of the raw, unpolished truth. That night 3 years ago, a child had been left behind. And nothing, no testimony, no evidence, no law could erase that fact. As the doors swung closed for recess, Officer Moore whispered to himself, almost inaudibly, we didn't know." Rex whimpered softly, the sound echoing in the empty hall, carrying a weight far heavier than his years, heavier than the trial, heavier than the law itself. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of Franklin County, someone who had issued the orders that left a child alone, smiled. They thought no one would ever uncover the truth. But the smallest voice in the courtroom had spoken. And now the world had to listen. The courtroom reconvened after recess, the tension thicker than ever. Every eye was on Officer Daniel Moore. He had trained Rex from a puppy, forged a bond stronger than most human friendships. Yet today, that bond was on display not for accolades, but for judgment. Moore approached the stand, uniform pressed and neat, face pale. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and tried to breathe through the weight of what he knew, the secrets buried under protocols, the truths no one had dared speak. His hands were steady only in appearance. Judge Watkins regarded him with a cold precision. "Officer Moore, please recount the events of the East Harbor raid, specifically regarding K9 Rex and the room identified as hazardous." Moore swallowed, every muscle tensed. "Yes, Your Honor. We entered the warehouse around 2:00 a.m. The building had reports of structural instability and potential explosives. Rex led the initial sweep, checking each area for threats. He paused at one room. He signaled an alert." The defense attorney raised an eyebrow. "An alert? Could you elaborate?" Moore shifted uncomfortably. "Rex," he scratched at the door. He barked, tried to indicate someone was inside. "But I received a command over the radio to proceed with the main operation. We were instructed not to enter that room. Safety protocols, evidence protocols. I obeyed the order." The room stirred. Jurors leaned forward. Every word Moore spoke seemed to carry the weight of accountability. Lily, sitting beside her foster mother, watched Rex closely. The dog's ears twitched, his eyes never left Moore. There was a connection, unspoken, electric. The prosecutor cleared his throat. "Officer Moore, did you at any point question the order to bypass the room?" Moore's throat tightened. I considered it. I wanted to enter, but the structural report was clear. Risk was too high. We followed protocol." Lily frowned, little fingers clutching Rex's fur. "You could have listened to him," she whispered. Moore's lips twitched with the faintest twitch of guilt. He hadn't just followed orders. He had ignored a warning, an instinct trained into Rex from puppyhood. He had watched the dog hesitate, signaling danger, but had prioritized procedure over life. The defense attorney pressed, voice sharp. "And did you personally verify the room was empty before leaving?" Moore hesitated. He glanced at the video replayed earlier, the tiny hand pressed to the door, the shadow of a child unseen by all. "No, sir. I did not. We were ordered to continue the main operation." The courtroom murmured. A collective weight pressed down, a suffocating awareness of the human cost of protocol. Judge Watkins leaned forward. "Officer Moore, are you aware a child was found inside that room hours later?" "Yes, Your Honor," Moore said, voice trembling now. "She survived by luck," and he trailed off, unable to finish. Lily's voice rang out, small but fierce. "By him," she patted Rex's side. He tried. The dog responded instantly, a low whine, pressing his head closer to her lap. Eyes wide, ears flat, communicating everything he could in the language of instinct and memory. Moore's hand shook slightly on the microphone. The room's eyes bore into him, waiting for explanation, justification, confession. He had spent nights haunted by the sound of tiny cries he never heard in time. The memory of the child hidden in darkness had never left him. And now, confronted with the truth, he had no shield. The defense attorney seized the opportunity. "Officer Moore, you admit that your obedience to orders superseded the welfare of a child, correct?" Moore's chest tightened. Every fiber of his being screamed against the accusation. "I obeyed what I believed to be lawful orders. I acted under command." "You chose procedure over life," the attorney pressed. "How can this courtroom trust that your actions, Rex's actions, were guided by judgment rather than blind obedience?" Moore's jaw clenched. His eyes flicked to Rex. The dog had been trained to obey him. Today he felt as though the roles were reversed. The dog had been trying to guide him, alert him, warn him, and he had ignored it. The judge's voice cut through, quiet but firm. "Officer Moore, the court recognizes the difficulty of the situation, but testimony must continue. Was there anyone directing you that night who might bear responsibility beyond the immediate chain of command?" Moore hesitated, his mind racing. The orders had come from higher up, a captain perhaps beyond that, a shadowed layer of bureaucracy no one would dare question. He knew what he could say and what he could not. "Yes, Your Honor," he said carefully. "The orders were given from a command post. Specific names I cannot disclose without authorization." The judge raised an eyebrow. "We will ensure that disclosure follows proper channels. Meanwhile, the court requires your testimony regarding Rex's conduct." Moore nodded. "Rex, he did exactly what I trained him to do. He alerted to the presence of a child. He showed all signs, but I obeyed the command to continue. I am responsible for leaving the room unsearched, for not insisting." His voice broke. The courtroom went silent again. The human and canine bond, raw and exposed, seemed to permeate every corner. The defense attorney whispered something under his breath to the jury, nodding toward Rex. "Notice the dog's behavior. Notice he remembers. Notice that even now, years later, he carries the memory of what was left behind." Rex let out a quiet whine and shifted slightly closer to Lily. His eyes were wide, reflecting the courtroom lights, but also something more, something that resembled understanding. Lily's small fingers stroked his fur. "He's sorry," she said plainly. And in that moment, every adult present felt it. The weight of instinct, of loyalty, of truth that could not be denied. The judge pressed on. "Officer Moore, did anyone on site dispute your assessment that the room was unsafe?" Moore swallowed hard. "No, orders were clear. Structural engineers, supervisors, everyone agreed. I was alone in doubting, in feeling the warning from Rex, but I could not defy orders in the moment." The jurors exchanged looks. The air in the courtroom thickened. Every law they had learned, every assumption about protocol, now seemed fragile in the face of a child's memory and a dog's instinct. The defendant shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The veneer of confidence he had maintained through years of manipulation cracked, however slightly, as he realized the narrative was slipping. Not through evidence, not through lawyers, but through a toddler's testimony and a dog who remembered far more than anyone thought. The judge called a brief recess, motioning for all but essential personnel to leave. Moore remained, hand on Rex's leash, head bowed. Outside the courtroom doors, the world buzzed with speculation. News crews were already crafting headlines that would dominate social media by evening. Toddler confronts K9 in court, dog whines in response. Inside, Moore knelt beside Rex for a moment, whispering, "I should have listened." The dog pressed his head into Moore's shoulder, a quiet, forgiving nuzzle. but with a weight of memory that neither could erase. And in the back of the courtroom, the defense attorney whispered into a phone, "They're finally admitting it. Prepare the next move. The cracks are visible. This trial is about to explode." The smallest voice had spoken. The dog had remembered. And Officer Moore, for the first time, understood that obedience alone could not protect anyone. Not a child, not a K-9, not even the fragile illusion of justice. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere a shadow moved. Someone who had issued the orders that left a child alone, was watching, waiting, calculating. Because the revelations in that courtroom were dangerous. And when the doors opened again, the world would see not just a trial, but a reckoning. The next witness would not just testify. They would set in motion a chain of events that no one, not even Moore, could predict. The night that had been buried was awake. And the courtroom had no choice but to face it. The courtroom had emptied, but the air outside was thick with tension. News of the toddler addressing Rex had spread faster than anyone could track. Phones buzzed incessantly, notifications pinged, and social media lit up with videos of Lily and the dog. "Toddler talks to police dog in courtroom" was trending nationally within hours. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, flashing cameras at anyone who moved, whispering questions to the air. Inside, things were far more perilous than headlines could capture. Officer Moore walked with Rex to the holding area, checking the leash, ensuring Lily remained close to her foster mother. Security had been heightened, but even the best measures couldn't erase the reality. Someone powerful, someone dangerous, didn't want the truth to see daylight. Across town, in an unmarked black SUV, a shadowy figure watched news feeds intently. The defendant's associates were moving, calculating, their loyalty tested against the threat of exposure. The warehouse raid, the ignored room, the child who had survived, all had become variables they could not control. Back at the courthouse, as the afternoon hearing began, a sudden commotion froze everyone. The lights flickered violently and then cut out entirely. Darkness swallowed the room. Gasps and whispers erupted. The judge's gavel fell but was nearly inaudible against the sudden panic. Security personnel shouted instructions as officers scrambled, flashlights slicing through shadows. Lily screamed. Small, terrified, her hand gripping Rex's fur. Rex's ears twitched, his body stiffened. The scent of danger, distant but sharp, hit him immediately. He growled low in his chest, a warning, a primal alert that something unseen had entered their space. "Stay with me, Rex," Moore murmured, trying to calm himself as much as the dog. From the shadows, a hand lunged toward Lily. Quick, calculated, meant to intimidate, but lethal. The figure was masked, moving with terrifying precision. Moore reacted instinctively, but he was caught between protecting the child and maintaining order. Rex launched. The German Shepherd was faster than anyone could anticipate. His powerful body collided with the intruder, knocking him backward. Teeth flashed in the dim light, a warning that left no doubt. Rex was not to be trifled with. The masked man rolled, reaching for a weapon concealed under his jacket. Moore dove for Lily, shielding her with his body. A sharp bang echoed. Was it a gun? The darkness played tricks on everyone's eyes. The dog barked, snapping, growling, pressing the threat back into the shadows. By the time the emergency lights flickered on, security officers had surrounded the intruder. He was disarmed and restrained. Rex stood over him, chest heaving, eyes glinting with the sharp intelligence that had earned him every medal, every commendation. The dog's growl remained, a sound full of memory and anger, protective, unyielding. The judge, pale and shaken, called for order. "Everyone remain calm," she shouted. "Security, take control." Lily clung to Rex, whispering, "I knew you'd come back." The man was led away, and under questioning it became clear. He had been sent deliberately to intimidate the child, to prevent testimony from altering the outcome of the trial. Someone powerful didn't want the sealed room. the ignored warnings, or the child's story to surface. Moore's hands shook as he released the leash slightly. He knelt beside Rex. "You saved her," he murmured, almost unable to comprehend it himself. The dog's body pressed against him as if confirming the bond forged through years of trust and loyalty, and solidified tonight through danger. The courtroom, though physically safe, now carried a deeper tension. No one doubted that this trial had entered a dangerous zone. The evidence, the testimony, the viral videos, they were no longer abstract. They were threats, sparks in a powder keg of corruption, negligence, and hidden agendas. The prosecutor adjusted his notes, trying to regain control. "Your Honor, given the attempted interference, I request immediate security measures for all witnesses, and I suggest we continue with federal oversight of the case." Judge Watkins nodded, voice tight. "So ordered. Officer Moore, Rex, the child, and her guardian are to be escorted under enhanced security. This courtroom will not continue proceedings until safety is assured." But outside, the danger lingered. The intruder had been caught, yes, but his presence revealed networks, reach, and resources. Someone had access to the courthouse and to intelligence about the case. Someone who would not stop. Lily's foster mother whispered as she held her daughter close. "Do you understand what just happened?" Lily shook her head, eyes wide, but her fingers stroked Rex's fur with calm certainty. "He came back. He said it was okay." Rex, sensing her calm, lay down beside her, alert but controlled. He had understood the threat, had acted decisively, and now remained a silent guardian. Officer Moore, still shaken, realized something profound. Rex had done more than protect a child. He had ensured that the story, the truth, remained untold only to those who tried to bury it. And the courtroom, now aware of the potential dangers, understood another lesson. Justice was fragile. It was not only held by laws or judges. It was held by the instincts of the living, the courage of a child, the loyalty of a dog, the conscience of those willing to speak. By evening, the courthouse was quiet, cameras still rolling outside, the national media abuzz. Social media exploded with footage of Lily and Rex, of the tense moments captured by security cams, of the chaos and bravery displayed in real time. The story became more than a case, it became a symbol. Yet inside the shadows, those with something to lose watched. Threats were whispered, messages sent, instructions given. Ensure the child did not testify further. Influence witnesses. Interfere. But the smallest voice had already spoken, and Rex had already proven he would act. Moore looked down at Rex, the dog's ears flicked, tail still, body tense. "We're not done," Moore whispered, "and I don't know if we'll be safe." Rex rested his head in Moore's hand, eyes intelligent, aware. They both knew the danger had not ended, it had only begun. Outside, the streets of Franklin County hummed with ordinary life, but the shadow of what had occurred inside the courthouse lingered, invisible yet palpable. A 3-year-old girl, a scarred K-9, and an officer whose conscience was now exposed. They were the eye of a storm. And the storm was about to grow. Because the forces that tried to bury the past were patient, relentless, and ruthless. And they would not stop, unless someone smaller, braver, and faster than anyone expected stood in their way. Rex stood, tail stiff, muscles coiled. Lily grabbed his neck. Together they would face what came next. The world watched, the danger waited, and justice, once quiet, now roared. By the next morning, the courthouse and surrounding streets were buzzing like a live wire. The story of the 3-year-old confronting a decorated K-9 had gone viral overnight. News helicopters hovered above Franklin County, flashing their searchlights across the courthouse steps. Social media feeds exploded with videos of Lily and Rex, captions screaming, "Toddler exposes police raid cover-up." But while the world was entertained, inside the courthouse, danger had only grown sharper. Federal agents had arrived. Dressed in navy suits and tactical vests, their presence exuded authority and quiet menace. They moved through the halls quickly, scanning, questioning, cataloging. The judge had authorized their intervention after the attempted attack during the previous day's hearing. The intent was clear. Someone inside or outside was trying to manipulate or intimidate the witnesses. Officer Moore watched them with a mix of relief and apprehension. For years, he had been trained to trust the system, to believe that justice and procedure protected everyone. Now, he realized that obedience alone had nearly cost a life. Rex had saved it. The prosecutor, visibly calmer with federal oversight in place, motioned for the introduction of new evidence. Digital records, bodycam footage, maintenance reports, and internal communications were pulled into the courtroom. Every file, every message, every timestamp was scrutinized with clinical precision. The video of the warehouse raid from 3 years prior was replayed again. This time, the agents focused not just on Rex's behavior, but on every decision point, the commands, the pauses, the rooms bypassed. The footage was unedited, unforgiving. The sealed room, marked unstable, glowed dimly in the night vision footage. A child, hidden in the shadows behind a pile of crates, was clearly visible for a fraction of a second. The jury leaned forward, absorbing the truth. Every gesture, every sound, every pause told a story of neglect but also of survival. Federal Agent Morales, mid-30s, sharp-eyed and precise, presented additional data. This communication log shows that multiple officers were aware of Rex's alerts, she said, voice calm, almost clinical. Orders were issued from a higher authority to continue the main sweep without verifying the sealed room. Our investigation indicates this was a deliberate choice to prioritize evidence over potential lives. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The defense attorney's face tightened. He had hoped the chaos of the toddler's statements would be dismissed as emotional theatrics, but here, objective evidence corroborated everything Lily had said. The judge's hand hovered over the gavel, considering. Officer Moore, is this consistent with your recollection? Moore nodded slowly. Yes, Your Honor, I followed the chain of command. Rex alerted, I saw it, I knew, but I obeyed orders. His voice cracked. I carry that with me every day. Lily reached for Rex's paw, holding it tight. He tried, she whispered. He really tried. The court understood the weight behind her words. It wasn't just a dog following commands. It was a K-9 trained to protect, forced to ignore instinct. A child left in harm's way, a system that prioritized protocol over life. Federal agents had uncovered more than just the warehouse logs. Internal emails hinted at a cover-up. Supervisors worried about public perception, about political pressure, about the success rate of the raid. One email noted, "Do not delay the sweep for unverified occupants. The child is not our concern. Proceed immediately." The jury's expressions darkened. The air was thick with disbelief, anger, and horror. This was beyond negligence. It was deliberate. The defense attorney rose again, trying to maintain control. Your Honor, these documents, while troubling, do not prove intent to harm. They demonstrate oversight and prioritization. Surely no one here intended to endanger a child. But the room knew better. Officer Moore had spoken, Rex had reacted, and Lily had survived. Intent, oversight, consequence. They had collided in ways the law rarely measured. Federal Agent Morales continued, displaying a folder of images and reports. We've also confirmed that the structural engineer's assessment was exaggerated. The room could have been accessed safely with proper precautions. This suggests the decision to bypass was influenced by factors beyond immediate safety, namely, evidence control and fear of procedural scrutiny. The courtroom shivered under the weight of that statement. Every officer present, every juror, every observer felt the undeniable truth. This was not a simple misstep. It was a choice, a deliberate one. The prosecutor's tone sharpened. Your Honor, this evidence establishes negligence, procedural misconduct, and obstruction of justice. Furthermore, The defendant's associates are known to have leveraged political connections to influence operations. The combination of these factors created a direct threat to the child's safety. The defense attorney sat down, grim. His strategy had crumbled. The story of the toddler and the dog was no longer a heartwarming viral video. It was the cornerstone of a federal investigation that could end careers, destroy reputations, and expose systemic failures. Judge Watkins exhaled slowly, weighing the implications. The court acknowledges the severity of these findings. The jury will be instructed to consider all evidence in context, including the actions or inactions of law enforcement personnel. Further hearings will include testimony from the federal agents regarding procedural oversight. Rex lay quietly at Lily's feet, ears flicking occasionally toward Moore. The dog's calm demeanor belied the intensity of the revelations. His instincts had been right. His alerts had been ignored. And yet, through courage and intuition, he had protected the child. Outside, security remained tight. The shadowy network that had attempted intimidation the previous day had been deterred, but not eliminated. The courthouse had become a battleground not just for justice, but for truth itself. As the day wore on, more witnesses were called. Officers who had participated in the raid gave corroborating statements. Emails were read aloud. Footage was analyzed frame by frame. Each revelation dug deeper into the chain of decisions that had endangered Lily. The defendant's face grew pale. His confidence was eroding with every image, every document, every testimony. What had been a simple trial now resembled a full-scale investigation into systemic failure. Yet through it all, Lily remained remarkably composed. She clung to Rex, her small hand stroking his fur. The bond between child and dog had become the unspoken thread running through the chaos. The courtroom had witnessed something rare, a living testament to loyalty, instinct, and truth. The judge finally called a recess as the day drew to a close. Moore knelt beside Rex. "We did the right thing today," he whispered, though the weight of past decisions still pressed on him. Rex pressed his head against Moore's shoulder, eyes bright with understanding. And as they walked out, Lily held tightly to her foster mother's hand, glancing up at Rex with trust and admiration. The federal agents lingered, reviewing notes, compiling evidence, preparing for the final stages. They understood that this case would set precedents: legal, procedural, emotional. Outside the courthouse, news crews waited, but this time, the story was no longer a viral sensation. It was a matter of record: negligence, misconduct, survival, and instinct colliding in a moment that would forever define the limits of protocol and the power of conscience. Rex, the dog who had once been ignored, was now central to the truth. And Lily, the child who had waited 3 years, had become more than a witness. She had become the voice of justice, small but unbreakable, supported by a guardian unlike any other, a dog whose instincts had never been wrong. As dusk fell, a quiet sense of inevitability settled over Franklin County. Careers would be scrutinized, orders would be questioned, lives had been changed. And through it all, one undeniable truth remained: some instincts, human or canine, cannot be ignored. The courtroom doors closed behind them, but the world outside and the truths unearthed would not stay silent. The morning sun cast long shadows across Franklin County Courthouse as the courtroom prepared for the trial's final stages. Outside, cameras and reporters clustered like a storm of buzzing bees. Social media feeds had become a live timeline: clips of Lily hugging Rex, screenshots of Officer Moore's testimony, and analysis of the federal investigation flooded the world. Inside, the atmosphere was electric but tense. Judge Watkins, calm yet unyielding, sat at the bench. She had presided over hundreds of cases, but never one like this: a combination of law, instinct, and morality colliding in the most unexpected ways. Lily, small and poised, sat beside her foster mother. Her hand rested on Rex's head, fingers tracing the scar on his muzzle. The dog remained alert, sensing every nuance of the room. Even now, Rex's presence radiated authority and protection, a silent reminder that instinct could sometimes be the strongest witness of all. The federal agents had taken their seats in the back, eyes sharp, scanning the courtroom for threats or irregularities. Officer Moore stayed close to Rex, his uniform pressed, his hands trembling only slightly as he prepared to continue testimony. The prosecutor rose, folder in hand, addressing the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence you have seen, the testimony you have heard, demonstrates a profound failure of protocol. A 3-year-old child was left alone, endangered, and overlooked. Yet, through courage, survival, and the guidance of a K-9, she lived. This is not just a story about negligence. It is about accountability, responsibility, and truth." The defense attorney countered smoothly, but now with less confidence than before. "Members of the jury, while the events are unfortunate, it is essential to remember that no malice was intended. Orders were followed. Safety was prioritized. The child survived unharmed. Mistakes do not equal criminal intent." Lily's eyes, bright and unwavering, met the jury. Though small, her presence carried weight far beyond her years. One juror whispered to another, "How can you ignore a child like that?" And the dog, he reacted to everything. The court was silent as Moore took the stand again. "I take full responsibility for obeying orders and failing to verify the room," he admitted. "Rex tried to alert us. I didn't follow through. I am haunted by that night every day. But I will do everything I can to ensure this never happens again." Rex pressed his head lightly against Moore's hand, as if acknowledging both apology and truth. The dog's eyes, intelligent and wide, seemed to communicate everything Moore could not put into words. Then came the most pivotal moment of all. Lily was asked to recount her experience for the court. With her small voice, clear and precise, she said, "I was scared, I cried. I didn't know anyone would find me, but Rex stayed. He tried to get help. He barked. I waited for someone to come, and I hoped, and you came back." The courtroom shivered. Every adult there recognized something extraordinary. A child's memory, a dog's instincts, and human fallibility had collided in a way that no law, no procedure could completely capture. The judge leaned forward. "It is clear that the events of that night, combined with the testimony and evidence, indicate a systemic failure. The question before this jury is not just the legality of the raid, but the accountability of those involved." Federal agents nodded subtly, confirming the accuracy of prior statements and evidence. Outside, the cameras flashed incessantly, broadcasting every reaction. The defense attorney attempted one last maneuver. "Your Honor, we request that the court consider mitigating circumstances, the potential dangers during the raid, the necessity of following orders, and the absence of prior incidents of negligence. My client's intent was never to endanger a child." Judge Watkins' eyes were unwavering. "Noted. However, the court recognizes that intent and consequence are separate. The consequence was nearly catastrophic, and the court will not dismiss the evidence presented today, nor the testimony of witnesses, including the smallest and the most loyal among us." Whispers traveled through the courtroom. Who was she referring to? All eyes turned to Lily and Rex. The small girl's hand rested lightly on the dog's neck, and his ears flicked once, tail still, eyes wide. The connection between them was undeniable, a silent bond stronger than any legal argument. The jury filed out to deliberate. Silence fell over the room, heavy and electric. Even the defendant, once smug and confident, sat rigid, sweat dampening the collar of his suit. The tables had turned. The trial was no longer a simple matter of procedure. It had become a reckoning of morality and instinct. Outside the courthouse, reporters speculated wildly. Every newscaster had the same question. Would the jury recognize the importance of the dog's instincts, the child's testimony, and the human error involved? Social media exploded with theories and debate. Inside, Lily hugged Rex tightly. "You saved me," she whispered. The dog leaned into her, muscles tense but attentive, as though acknowledging that the danger was not entirely over. Moore knelt beside them, voice low. "You both did. You reminded us all that the smallest voice can hold the greatest truth." Hours passed. The jury deliberated, returning occasionally to review exhibits. Each replayed frame, each document, each statement reinforced the extraordinary chain of events. The warehouse footage, emails, bodycam recordings, they were not just evidence. They were the silent witnesses of 3 years of survival, instinct, and consequence. By late afternoon, the jury filed back into the courtroom. Silence blanketed the room, broken only by the judge's voice. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson stood, face pale, hands shaking slightly. "We have, Your Honor." A hush fell, cameras clicked. The weight of anticipation pressed into every corner. Judge Watkins nodded. "Please read the verdict." The foreperson took a deep breath. On the count of negligence leading to endangerment of a minor, we find the defendant and supervising officers responsible. On all other counts related to procedural misconduct and obstruction, we find them guilty. Gasps filled the room, murmurs surged. The defendant's associates slumped, stunned. The media outside exploded. Justice, delayed but undeniable, had spoken. The judge slammed the gavel, voice commanding. The court finds sufficient cause for sentencing and further review of departmental procedures to prevent recurrence. Court is adjourned for today. Lily clapped softly, eyes wide, and hugged Rex. Moore knelt, tears glistening. "We did it," he whispered. "You both made sure the truth came out." Rex leaned into the little girl, tail thumping gently. Every person in the courtroom who had doubted, who had questioned, now understood. Instinct, courage, and the smallest voice could alter the course of justice. Outside, reporters scrambled, capturing interviews and reactions. Social media lit up with admiration for the child and the dog. The hashtag #Rex and Lily trended nationally. The story of bravery, instinct, and accountability had captivated the world. Yet in the shadows, not all threats had vanished. Some who had tried to influence the trial remained hidden, waiting, calculating. But for now, the courtroom and Lily and Rex stood victorious. The verdict had been delivered. The child had spoken. The dog had acted. And justice, for the first time in 3 years, had listened. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Franklin County Courthouse as Lily, Rex, and Officer Moore prepared for the final hearing. Today wasn't just about justice. It was about closure, recognition, and a future that had once seemed impossible. Outside, reporters and onlookers waited, but inside the air was calm, charged with anticipation. Judge Watkins, poised and solemn, addressed the court. In light of the evidence presented and the extraordinary bravery demonstrated, this court has ruled not only on the criminal proceedings but also on the welfare of the minor involved. Lily's foster mother squeezed her hand. The small girl's brown eyes, wide and unwavering, flicked to Rex, who sat quietly at her feet. The scarred K9, once a silent guardian of the night, had become her hero, her protector, her constant companion. "We recognize that the child, now 3 years old, deserves a stable and loving home," the judge continued. "Furthermore, the dog who displayed remarkable courage and loyalty during the events leading up to this trial shall remain with the child, officially recognized as a service and protective companion." A ripple of whispers ran through the courtroom. Reporters' cameras clicked furiously, capturing the moment. Social media notifications exploded with messages of admiration, hope, and awe. The story of the toddler who had spoken to a police dog and the dog who had responded with instinctive bravery had captivated the nation. The defendant sat slumped, the weight of guilt finally pressing down on him. His network of threats had crumbled. No intimidation, no manipulation, no corruption could undo what had been revealed. The truth had emerged, unrelenting and undeniable. Moore crouched beside Rex, his hand resting on the dog's head. "You've done more than I could ever imagine," he whispered. "You saved her, and you saved the truth." Lily stood small but resolute and addressed the judge in her own words. "I waited for someone to come back. Rex waited too, and he didn't give up. I want him to stay with me, always." The courtroom responded with murmurs of approval. Even the judge's stern demeanor softened at the sight of a child's trust in a dog that had once been a silent witness to tragedy. After the formalities, the courtroom doors opened, and the trio walked out into the bright morning light. Cameras flashed incessantly. Crowds cheered softly, some moved to tears by the unique bond they were witnessing. Lily clutched Rex's neck tightly, his fur rough but comforting under her small hands. The press gathered quickly, desperate for statements. Moore stepped forward. "Today," he said, voice steady, "justice was not only about the law, it was about listening, about instincts, about the smallest voices being heard. Lily and Rex have reminded all of us that courage and loyalty can't be measured by size or status." The foster mother wrapped her arms around Lily. "You're finally safe, sweet girl," she whispered. Tears streamed down her face. Lily hugged her tightly, eyes shining. "We're all together now," she said. Rex pressed his head against her shoulder, tail thumping gently. Weeks later, the adoption papers were finalized. The judge's office witnessed the official process, Lily beaming as the documents were signed. Rex sat obediently beside her, leash in Moore's hand, watching every motion with alert intelligence. The city held a small ceremony recognizing Rex for his bravery. Medals and certificates were awarded, but the real acknowledgement came from Lily. She stood on a small podium beside the dog, her tiny hand pressing against his scarred muzzle. "You're my hero," she said plainly. The room was silent for a moment, then applause erupted, filling the space with warmth and admiration. But the shadows of the past weren't gone entirely. Officer Moore, Lily, and Rex remained vigilant. The networks that had tried to interfere with the trial were not entirely dismantled. Threats had been neutralized, yes, but caution lingered. Moore remained at Lily's side during outings, and Rex's presence was a constant reassurance, alert and protective. Despite the lingering dangers, life began to settle into a rhythm. Morning walks in the park, bedtime stories, training sessions with Rex, and quiet afternoons painting or playing in the yard, all became the foundation of a childhood that had once seemed impossible. Lily laughed freely, a sound that had been missing for 3 long years. She spoke to Rex constantly, whispering secrets, stories, and the occasional reprimand, her bond with him unbreakable. The dog, in turn, remained attentive, protective, and deeply attuned to her needs. Moore watched from the porch, the weight of responsibility still heavy but tempered with relief. The mistakes of the past could not be undone, but the present and future could be safeguarded. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily whispered to Rex, "I'll never be scared again. You'll always be with me." The dog rested his head on her lap, eyes gleaming with understanding. Moore sat beside them, hand resting on Rex's back, thinking how extraordinary it was that a child, a dog, and a man could forge a bond strong enough to withstand negligence, threats, and fear. The city continued to follow the story. News outlets praised the courage of all involved, highlighting not only the legal victory but the emotional triumph. A child's voice, once small and unheard, had shifted the course of events. A dog's instincts, once ignored, had saved a life. And an officer's conscience, once burdened with regret, had been partially redeemed through courage and honesty. But perhaps the most important lesson was quiet, personal, and indelible. Loyalty, love, and instinct, human or canine, could not be ignored. They could defy odds, alter destinies, and teach the world about courage in its purest form. As night fell, the 3 of them sat together on the porch, the stars blinking above. The world was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. But for Lily, for Rex, And for Moore, this moment was proof that love, loyalty, and bravery could triumph even in the darkest hours. And though challenges would inevitably arise, they were no longer alone. The child had found her voice. The dog had fulfilled his duty. And together they had forged a family, scarred, resilient, and unstoppable. The final frame, if one could capture it, would be Lily hugging Rex tightly, Moore's hand resting on the dog's head, and the courthouse fatting in the background, a testament to survival, justice, and the power of the bonds that define us. Because in the end, the story wasn't about who had failed, or who had survived, or who had obeyed orders. It was about who had waited, who had listened, and who had returned. And that in the quiet became the most extraordinary truth of all.